I don't need to learn Greek because we've got these great tools. I've got Logos Bible software, so I don't need to learn Greek, or at least I only need to know enough to be able to use the tools. I want to talk about that today. So a little while ago, I recorded a video talking about or responding to the argument or the proposition, shall we say, that a pastor does not need to learn Greek to be a pastor. And I gave a bunch of reasons why I think it's important for a pastor to know Greek and to know the language well. But the question came up in the comments, well, how well? I mean, if we've got all these great tools, we've got Logos Bible software, and we've got grammars, and we've got the morphology tools in Logos Bible software and accordance and all these other ones, then how much Greek do I need to know? Surely, if I've got these tools, I can work out from that what I need with regards to Greek. So I wanted to talk about that because there's some truth in this, right? There is some truth. And I think certainly today, we are way better off than any generation of pastors, of teachers have ever been any time in history. It's really amazing just how many resources we have today that have never been available throughout church history, throughout history. And so I think it's really important that we take advantage of that and make use of those. But I want you to be the most effective you can be with your Bible, with your New Testament, with your teaching, and so on. And so I want to address this question. Can we get away just with knowing a little bit of Greek, or do we need to go all the way and be fluent in the New Testament, in the Greek language? Now, it's an important question because there are a number of grammars today, like Danny Zacharias' grammar, which is designed to help you if all you're doing is working with Bible software. And I think there's a place for this in a sense, but I would encourage you not really to stop there. I personally, if you're going to a seminary where they're going to teach you just to use the tools, I think you're missing out. And secondly, I think if you are committed to knowing the scriptures well, then I think you're going to shortchange yourself by not learning the language as well. Now, just let me address a quick question as we start here. What about all those people who go through seminary and they learn Greek in seminary and they come out the other side, but they don't keep their Greek up? What do we say about those people? Well, for the most part, a lot of those people are still using Greek and they're using the tools to learn Greek. So they might have learned, they might have done 6 semesters, say, of Greek in seminary, but then after seminary, they revert to tools. And I think this is one of the dangers. I can't tell you how many people have joined Master New Testament Greek or who I've spoken to who have had exactly this problem. They go through, they use the tools, and they feel that as they're using the tools, they become more familiar with the tools and less familiar with the language. They end up looking at the details of the language, and you get all these labels and ideas and tense forms and all this kind of stuff, but you lose what they actually mean, and more important, you lose how they contribute to the overall meaning of the text. And I think this is a major issue for us. But beyond that as well, a lot of the time, if you go through seminary and you learn Greek and you come out the other side and you go into full-time ministry, often it's not so much the Greek that's going to carry you through full-time ministry, it's actually all the other things you learn in seminary. So if you've never been through seminary and you don't have any of that training and background, then coming into a ministry related role without languages is going to be far more telling than if you go to seminary, you get that broader grounding and you forget your Greek. So for people who have gone to seminary, they've learnt the languages and forgotten them, they're in not as bad a position as people who have never been to seminary or Bible college and have not got the languages. But I would say that even beyond that, there's a lot of reason to keep going and to go a lot further in Greek than just being content to use tools. Now, one tool that I really want to encourage you to use before we go on is the like button. The like button below is a basic tool that we use on YouTube to make sure that we can pick and choose our way through the best videos on the internet. So hit the like button, make sure other people know that this is a helpful video as well. And if you're there and you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button and the notify bell. That way when new videos are released, you'll find out about them first. So one of my early members, when I first started Master New Testament Greek, the first thing I ever sold was what's now called the Student Edition, which is really just the vocabulary which you can put into an app and then work through those. And I sort of explain how to work through that and everything. But it was just, that was all it was. It was really just a vocab set. And I had a member very early on. His name is Ken, still a member of Master New Testament Greek. And he's a pastor, a very faithful pastor, works really hard. Now, he came from exactly this scenario. He went to seminary, he learnt Greek, And he carried on using it in his time as a pastor, preaching, teaching, doing exegesis, faithfully expositing the Word of God week in and week out with the knowledge that he gained from seminary. But then he went and he picked up Master New Testament Greek. He started learning the vocabulary so he could learn to read the text. And he explains this as it's a night and day difference. He said that no longer am I picking my way through the text, now I'm fully understanding the author's argument really in their own words. And this was really compelling, I think, for him. And I think this is a compelling reason to really learn Greek as well. Because here's what's going to happen. If you're going to work your way through, picking your way through the text, trying to understand what a Greek tense form is, this is in the perfect, and what does that mean? This is going to actually take a lot more time for you to do than if you're actually working through the text and reading the text fluently. So here's the thing. This is what it really boils down to, I think. Either you're going to spend more time each week working out in the text what's important, why it's important, how the tenses contribute to the author's original intention, or you can do that work up front where you spend some time, learn the language, do the work, get your head around it, and read the text fluently and learn to read the text fluently. And this doesn't have to be, it's not an all or nothing, right? Remember that. When we say you want to learn to read the text fluently, it doesn't mean that, day one, you're doing beginning Greek. Day two, you're reading the Greek New Testament fluently. It doesn't work that way. There's a long-term process that's in play here. And book by book, you can learn to read different sections of the New Testament and get the author's overall argument. So you can either work your way through on a week-by-week basis, digging into that level of detail, or you can do the work up front and then you don't have to worry about on a week-by-week basis. You become much more efficient on a week-by-week basis. Rather than spending 10 hours just working in the Greek text, you might spend 3 hours working in the Greek text because your knowledge of the language is so much more than it was, than it would be if you hadn't done that work. And that means that you can become more efficient in the text. And this is one of the reasons I think it's worth learning to read biblical Greek, because it's going to make you more efficient in the text, which then allows you to think more deeply about what you're talking about, the message behind this, and then how to apply that to your flock. So this is going to make you much more efficient on a day in and day out basis. And one of the biggest complaints you hear from pastors is they're overworked. And if pastors are overworked and they could shrink the amount of work they're doing on a day in and day out basis because they know the language better, that's probably going to lead to better overall results, not just for the pastor not feeling overwhelmed, but also for the church, who now gets more attention from that pastor because they're actually getting more of that pastor's time because he's not having to spend as much time working through the details, the nitty-gritty of the text, because that's just something he inherently understands. So I think it's well worth understanding the text at a far deeper and far richer level than the tools that you're going to get, because the tools are going to just sort of slow you down and you have to work through all those details. So here's another thing to take into account with this. If you're working with the tools and you're dependent on the tools for the work you're doing, you're picking your way through and figuring out tense forms and looking up Greek for the rest of us and looking at this grammar here because you don't remember what the aorist does or the pluperfect or whatever it happens to be, then the other issue here is not only your efficiency in the text is going to be compromised, but your actual the amount of first-hand knowledge you're passing on is also going to be compromised. You're actually not doing a great job of passing on your own knowledge and shepherding the flock from your own life. At this point, what you're doing is really going back to different sources, secondary sources, and you're then parroting essentially what they're saying about the text without necessarily adding anything new to it for yourself. In other words, it's really stunting, in a sense, your own learning. And because you're not as deep in the text, as you're not meditating in that text as much, because you're not working in the original language, I wonder if you're missing out on something for yourself, which then means you have to go back to the books and you're spending more time looking in books and just repeating what books are saying, rather than actually bringing something original from your own observations and from your own meditations. So that's another element of this. And that's the key thing here, is you're going to spend a lot more time, if you're not familiar and fluent in the Greek language, you're going to spend less time in the text and you're going to spend more time in those secondary sources. And that leads to a third issue here. And that is, if you're in these secondary sources, commentaries, exegetical commentaries, things like that, all of which are really helpful tools. But if you don't know the Greek well and you're looking at, 4 different views of a genitive in a particular passage, and one person says it's a genitive, a genitive absolute, another one says it's a objective genitive, another person says it's a subjective genitive, and maybe someone else says it's a, I don't know, a possessive genitive or something, and I'm making this up off the top of my head here. How do you know which it is? If you're using tools and you don't know enough language to follow the author's thoughts, this is the kind of argument you're really not going to be able to add very much to, which is going to then inhibit the way you actually interpret it, because you're not going to know how the use of the genitive in that particular instance actually contributes to the author's point, because you're looking at it at a word-by-word basis rather than following the author's thoughts. And this is where I think exegesis really falls apart. And I had a professor in seminary whom I love, but we went through a passage, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 verse 4, and he took the word skuos there, which is translated typically vessel, and he argued with us in the class that he believed this meant wife. That is, that each of you know how to possess your wife in sanctification and honor. Now, okay, you're looking at the individual word and you're looking at the details of this word and how it's used in other occurrences, and then you're trying to put it back into the context. But this is broken because the author's argument here is very much around self-control. And so to argue that this is about how you control your wife or how you keep your wife, I mean, it's a good sentiment. I think it's a godly thing to do, but I don't think it's the point of that passage. And again, this is where, you get stuck. If you're looking at the tools, you're looking at things at that detail level and you're missing the bigger picture and how the author is using individual words within the context to contribute to the author's overall meaning. So I think if you're working in the tools, you're picking your way through words and you're really missing out on how those words contribute to the author's overall message. Finally, as we close out here, let me just add one more thing. If you're going to go to seminary and you're going to learn beginning Greek, right? You're going to get through the first year of Greek, learn, beginning with New Testament Greek or Mounce's Basics of Biblical Greek or whatever, and you complete the work. You've done the hardest part of learning Greek. Really, beginning Greek is the hardest part, right? If you get through beginning Greek, why wouldn't you keep going? Why wouldn't you do the little extra work that's now going to move the needle significantly forward? Learn the vocabulary. Start reading text just straight away. Don't even wait around. I mean, it makes no sense to me whatsoever to say, I'm going to invest all this time and all this money to learn the basics of Greek, and then I'm going to give it up and go back to tools. It's crazy because you've done all the hard work. You've done all the stuff that needs to be done in order to become basically proficient. And now all you need to do is just get into a routine of learning vocabulary and reading. Really, that's it. It's not that hard. Why would you stop at that point? Why wouldn't you keep going? And so here's my encouragement to you. If you're one of those people who are like saying, well, we've got all these great tools and I know a little bit of Greek and I can pick my way through the tools and so on, you know what? Why not do that extra work? Why not just make it so that you're more proficient? Make it so that you can be more effective with the time you use in the study. Make it so that you're following the author's words in his own, with their own syntax, to follow his intention in his own language. Why not do that? It doesn't make any sense to stop. So keep going. Keep taking small, consistent steps every day toward mastery. So I want to hear from you though. If you're using the tools and you're not aiming to read Greek fluently, why? Let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear why you're not pushing yourself to go further to learn to read the text as well as being able to exegete it with a high degree of efficiency. Why wouldn't you do that? It makes no sense to me. I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment in the comment section below. And if you're interested in learning Greek and if you're interested in reading Greek, then let me try. I'd love to be an encouragement to you. Download my free roadmap to mastery at masterntgreek.com/roadmap. In that, I tell you a little bit about my story as well as lay out for you kind of what's involved in getting through that whole process of being able to read the entire Greek New Testament fluently without looking words up, without depending on tools, so that all the benefit of that work you do, but more importantly, all the benefit of the New Testament and the Word of God can be yours as you read the author's own words to understand their arguments the way they wanted to make them. Okay? So, masterntgreek.com/roadmap. Thank you so much for watching. Keep taking those small, consistent steps toward mastery, and I'll see you in the next video.